Patents protect innovation. They showcase technical expertise and create competitive edge. More importantly, they attract investors and fuel growth. Today, I have guests who are authority in the startup and deep tech ecosystem. I'm really, really excited to host them. And incidentally, in today's session, all of us on the stage have names starting from G. So it will be a great session. So please stick around till the end. I promise you it's going to be a great value addition for your knowledge. Good evening and welcome another startup in the another edition of Startup Series. I'm Govind Kedia. With my team Arctic Invent, we aim to help companies increase their enterprise value and protect them against copycats by way of building strategic IP portfolios. I do want to have a permission from my audience today to excuse my coughing today, which may be disturbing during the course of the session. Uh, but in these three past months, in these months, Startup Series has touched on various topics, all based on my interactions with them. And I thought maybe it's prudent to now come back to home and touch upon topic which my colleagues and I work with every day, patents and IP. However, with someone who has harnessed the power of it. And the most common question that people ask, why do they matter? Why should I, as a startup founder and entrepreneur, bother about it? What do investors look in IP portfolios? I thought it's best to get the answer in perspective straight from the people who matter, the investor and the startup founder. And that's why I have here today guest speakers. But before I introduce our speakers, very brief about their organizations. Celesta Capital is a venture capital firm that invests in deep tech technology companies. They have strong track records of success and investment in companies like IdeaForge, Carian, and many others. Celesta Capital is committed to help entrepreneurs build great companies and solve some of the most pressing problems. Celesta Capital is a valuable partner for entrepreneurs who are building deep tech technology companies. They have resource and expertise to help companies succeed, and they are committed to making positive impact on the world. And on the second, speaker, Innoplexes is a global technology company that provides artificial intelligence and blockchain solution to life science industries. Their solution helps pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, and contract research organizations to accelerate their drug discovery and development, improve clinical research, and bring new therapies to patients faster. They are among the top patent holders in this tech space and among top startups in India with largest patent portfolio. They have around 75 trademarks, more than 160 patents, more than 65 US patent granted, with a grant rate of more than 80%, and which is already counting and which is growing. I'm fortunate to have speakers from such organizations who are changing the world truly. So let me first get Gani Subramaniam on the stage to introduce and present today investors' view. Gani is a partner at Celesta Capital and have a great experience in running and evaluating startups and large organizations. And our second speaker, Gaurav, is a serial entrepreneur, co-founder and member executive board at Innoplexis AG and board member at Amrit AG. He will be helping us with his startup point of view and how it is useful in the journey so far. Welcome, Gani and Gaurav. But before we start, let's start hearing from our speakers. Gani, could you please introduce yourself to our audience? Your story, how did you get into the area of investing? Will be great start for the event.
First, Govind, thank you very much for inviting me to this session. And I'm, to be very honest, personally looking forward for the next 1 hour of discussion. And it's also honor to be in the same panel as Gaurav, who holds such a high track record in terms of intellectual property in his business. About myself, I started my, I finished my engineering in RSC Trichy, or NIT Trichy it is called. Joined Texas Instruments as a chip designer, stayed there for 15 plus years. Spent the last 3 years of my career in TI in US, where I led all of the wireless LAN engineering worldwide teams. This is in 2000 when I was involved and I actually led the very first development of the very first Wi-Fi chip in the world. And then came back to India, started a company called Cosmic Circuits with four of my co-founders and four of my colleagues in TI. Called Cosmic Circuits. And Cosmic Circuits, to be honest, at that time, if you know, the services was big time in India. India was known for services. So we took a plunge that we will not do services and we will do intellectual property licensing, which is precisely your topic. So, we took the plunge and we decided we will not do services, at the same time do intellectual property work, and licensed our IP to companies like Apple and Samsung, etc. And eventually the company had 500 intellectual property blocks in 2012, around 8 years after its co-founding, and sold the company to Cadence, which is a large multinational company on IC design. And then I, joined the investment firm. Cosmic was a self-funded company, and I know that the struggle I had to raise money for deep tech firms in India at that time. So I thought it's the best way is to join a venture capital and see whether we can get more money into the VC world. So the last 8 years, I'm a partner in Celesta Capital. Celesta Capital is one of the premier deep tech venture firms in the world. $1.1 billion assets under management, 90 plus companies, several deep tech companies in the geographies of US, India, Israel, and Japan. In India, we started our first investment in a chip design company called Aura Semi, which is valued $1 billion plus now. Idea Forge, which you mentioned, is filed for IPO, won the Disruptor Award by CNBC yesterday. Tonbo, one of the strong leaders in electro optics, and few others, right? So that's where I that's my career so far.
Thank you, Gani, and pleasure to have you. And I'm sure a lot of your experience we are going to, have learn from in terms of, how to leverage IP and really creating a successful business around it. So, Gaurav, over to you. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience and your story? How did you get into this startup arena? Couple of startups you have done. So some bit of your story would be a really great start for us.
Sure. Thank you, Govind, and a really a pleasure and an honor to be here on the same panel as Gani. He himself as he's a legend. When I see the experience and the kind of work that he did very early on, it was really brave of him to even pick that, choose that path at that time. Uh, about me, born Varanasi, grew up in 12 cities across different states, landed up in IIT Bombay in 2001, studied till 2005, and since then have been bitten by the startup bug very early on. Have been through a stream of different technologies. The only knack we can claim to have is, could pick up emerging technologies early on. So what started with the very early Web 2.0 play back in 2005 have been continuing with all different fancy jargon that we have for different technologies nowadays. Yeah. That was first startup had a decent exit. Second, I started services firm in Pune in 2008, and in 2011 again the product bug bit us. So my friend Gunjan Bhardwaj, we had done quite a bit of things together back in the campus. We had our own startups in the campus. We had started a newspaper, etc., and so on. So he said that, oh, let us do something together. And honestly, we didn't have much. I won't say there was a grand vision to start, but we just wanted to work together because we loved working together. That's how it started in 2011. That was Innoplexus. Got lucky that we got into pharma. The early clients itself were big pharma, and then we realized that data is going to be a big play. And early on, again, as Gani also mentioned in his story, that we also decided, okay, we don't want to build a typical services company. We wanted to build real technology. We wanted to build IP. That was very clear. So as soon as we had revenues, we were profitable. We really started operationalizing that part, and then so. Again, all of it in the entire journey, we have been blessed with an amazing team. We have been able to build all of it just because of the team members who were bold enough to think that yes, we can be inventors.
Yeah. Uh, Great. Thank you, Gaurav, for sharing this journey. And it's of course a great start for us. And just a reminder for audience, please put your question comments in the section, and we will have our guest to answer them as well. So catch them and ask your question directly. I'm sure I'll pick it for sure. So please do put your questions. Now let's start with the title of the episode and this talk. Let's broadly look at why patent and patent portfolio matters, and what is their importance to a startup. So let's look at the startup views first, and then the investor perspective. So over to you first, Gaurav. What is your view? Why patents and patent portfolio matter, and what is their importance to a startup?
Sure. For us, initially, it was really when we thought about it, it was a matter of um, uh, the input actually came from our investors as well. That uh, when we said that what we are doing is really unique, and this is something which nobody else is doing, and we have got something which is really there, and this is the thing which is powering us, our product. And we got, okay, if it is really that critical, why don't go for the IP? And that is what because till that time we had in mind that, okay, maybe we'll have something extraordinary and then we'll go for that process. But then we realized that what is helping the business, yeah, we need to protect that, and that's where we started. And for us today, we see in terms of the value of the patent, for us, it's one of our colleagues actually made that statement that it's like a house you build. Right? You don't build a house simply as an investment. When you're living in it, you build it. It protects you from rain, heat, and everything. That's where we see the value of the patent as well. That it's not simply as a someday monetization thing that we are looking at. We very much see that this is the core of what we are doing, and it will help us protect us from protect our product, protect our business, in the longer run. So that is where our thought process has been, that whatever we build, we should build from a perspective that we protect it.
Sure. Thanks. And Gani, how investor look at this conversation of why patent portfolios? You're on mute. Gani, you're on mute.
Oh,
Sorry about
sorry,
that.
sorry. So I work on deep tech startups, and the VC firms which work on deep tech startups, like what Gaurav is trying to build. One of the key way to measure the startup itself, whether to be investable or not for us, is patent portfolio, right? So patents get you a couple of things. One is it gets you a huge brand. So if a company says that they have like 30 patents, 40 patents, and let us say in the 30 and 40, maybe 10% are very critical and fundamental patents, they get a that really gets the image of the company up. So it's a very important thesis for us that we measure the patent portfolio of a startup. In fact, to be very honest with you, we in fact appoint a third party firm which looks at the patents of the companies, analyzes us with what is in the industry, and gives us a report on the strength of the patents also. So the patent portfolio of a deep tech startup is a pretty important way for us to measure how to value the company. And that's the same thing when somebody wants, see, how does the deep tech startup gets acquired? Most of the deep tech startup gets acquired, if you know, even including the drug discovery companies, they get acquired by the time they are in the revenue. Just by the time you are in the product, you ship your very first prototype, you complete your phase 2 trial, getting into phase 3 trial in a drug discovery, you get acquired. So the people are not betting on the revenue. People are betting on how good your patent portfolio is, and how could that patent portfolio create you a very solid, sustainable business lead for you. So even from an acquisition point of view, the patent portfolio is pretty important. So I mean, during the course of this conversation, we will cover several examples, or at least I'll give you few examples. To us, the patent portfolio of a deep tech startup is a pretty important consideration for us to invest in that startup.
Sure. So thanks, Danny. I think it's kind of builds the confidence of startup, and also want to build upon what Gaurav has said, that when you build a house, then you also build a fence around it, and patent it could be those fence as well. Just to start with, once you build a house, there is a protection around your house. So house being a company sometimes, and you build your IP around those things, right? Now let's start break it a bit more and take a step back, and let's look at terms which are thrown in deep tech community and kind of technology companies. IP led, IP backed, strong IP is used in startup ecosystem, especially in the deep tech, very often. And Gani, how do you define, as an investor, define IP? Because it's a very broad term. And what does it all encompass? I'm sure it encompass beyond patents as well. What is, of course, role of patent in this umbrella of IP, so to say? And if you can give some examples, that will really help us or our audience to kind of de declutter the IP as a word and IP led as a kind of a term, which is sometimes abused as well in the industry, right?
See, I mean, anything which is you have an intellectual property, whether it could be a design of a particular piece of code, particular piece of a chip design, those are called as intellectual property, right? Not necessarily all intellectual properties are patentable, because patent is a process by which some of this intellectual property, which you can defend in the in a public market or a public scrutiny, is what you go and patent it with multiple claims. But the patent is not the only. When patent is one of the best way to see how good the intellectual position of the company. But apart from that, there are several know-hows to do this. For example, let me give, and I don't know how many of the audience are based on chip design, but if you look at a chip design, if there is a fundamental circuit design, okay, which is very unique in nature, that could be patentable, and that could be patentable, and we could also, I mean, defend it with others not using it, etc. But using some circuits by doing a certain block level design, that may be very difficult to do. Okay, it may not be easy to do, it will be still very difficult to do, it's not easy to copy, but may not be defendable to patent it. That is, we call it as intellectual property. So for example, Cosmic probably would have had, like, the Cosmic Circuits, which is the company which I co-founded, probably would have had, I don't remember now, but maybe some 20 to 30 patents, but we had 500 intellectual property blocks, and this 500 intellectual property blocks would have used this 20 plus patents as a part of their design, right? So that is one, I would say, is in a vague way of uh, distinguishing between patents and intellectual property.
Great. Thanks, Gani. And Gaurav, what's your startup perspective on this? Can you tell us about how Plexus looks at IP overall, in, of course, beyond patents also, and what's your definition of IP in general?
Uh, so for us, in IP is really anything which gives us a distinct advantage, in the business, in the on the product side or the execution side, and something which we see clearly that it's defendable as well. That, then only we go for it. If we see something as which probably the I'll say the effort, and someday if we have to defend it, that if we see that itself is not going to be worth, probably we won't even go for it. Then in terms of the types of the IP, yes, we definitely patent is just one part of it. We have been looking at so our strategy has been like supplementing it. For example, even in IP, so we have design patents as well as and then the trademarks. So trademarks again, we have almost 80 trademarks across markets, and this again is tied up around the patents as well. That if we are looking at a product, we have the IP on the patent side that we have put, and then if the product is out and we are looking at it, then yes, we are also looking at the different trademarks around it, the different terms that we have coined, and so on. And design, I spoke, and then of course, if we talk about IP that way, yes, copyright, and that in itself, yeah, it's definitely a part. So we look at holistic perspective, so not just patents, but all different forms of IP, and how do they link up with each other, such that it is really in sync with the business itself, right? The direction the business is taking, and then our IP strategy should also follow that.
Sure. No, great. Thank you, Gaurav. And before I summarize and kind of talk about it, a question from a very dear friend, Rohit Chanana. So, Gani, for you, intellectual property block, can you give more clarity on that? What do you mean by intellectual property block? So, question by Rohit here before we move forward.
I mean, I'm more familiar with chip design. So, see, first and foremost, the business model for intellectual property would be licensing. Okay, so that itself it differentiates it. So, in terms of services, what we do, the customer gives us a spec and we deliver a software code or a piece of chip design to the customer, and whatever we do, it belongs to the customer. So nothing belongs to us as a company. But if I say that I'm an intellectual property company, what I mean is I am doing a piece of code and I'm doing a piece of block level design. It is rich in intellectual property. Whether it has patents or not, we will come to that later. But it is rich in intellectual property that I don't give it out to you. I license this to you. Okay, I license this technology to, which means that I allow him to use this particular piece of code for a certain duration of a year or a certain number of uses, etc. And I can revoke the license anytime from me. So the control is with me. Okay, so the intellectual property is in first is from a business model perspective. Clearly, we could use it to license the technology and not give it away, because in services, once you do it and give it away, that customer can use it as many times as he wants. You have no control for it. Intellectual property, I will always make sure that I allow you to use you for 3 years, or in the real worst case, if you give me infinite money for 7 years, I almost always don't give you lifetime usage, right? So that is where the intellectual property, I would say, is so I hope this brings some clarity. This brings some clarity in the sense you don't give it, the customer doesn't own it, you own it, and it is rich in intellectual property. And because it's rich in intellectual property, I license it, and I also carefully observe how the customer is using, and I can withdraw my license any point of the time.
Sure. No, great. I think that's a great explanation. And so what I kind of take away as a summary for this conversation is that when we talk about IP is a broader term and patent is part of it, and IP is always driven by the business. Like Gani also said that it has to protect the business, and it is something which is part of the business which you kind of license it out, or make it, patents are part of it to identify them, protect them when it comes to a public domain. And that's what Gaurav also mentioned, that when we look at IP, it's a combination of many things, and also aligns with the business. That is very important element of this entire IP conversation. So anybody listening this, it's very important insights that we are getting here. Now, following this insight, I'm sure everyone of our audience would ask, and want to hear about how to build a strong IP story around the business and technology which helps them attract investments. And Gaurav, since you have been part of this entire process since scratch, let us first hear from you. What's the cheat sheet for this? How did you actually use this entire IP story in the journey of your startups in the past and in the present? Would you share some insights on that?
Sure. So for us, what worked out better was that investments that we raised that were in Europe, and in Europe in general, the awareness around IP and the importance has been higher on the investors side as well. And that is where when we got that initial success, with that the initial set of core patents when we filed and went through the examination, and we saw that that's we are really close to the grant, and when we started looking at the value that that was being spoken about the investors and potential investors in the conversation, so we realized that definitely we are off to something, and we started doubling down more on that, because in product development or even in business, of course you would take certain bets. uh, not all bets will work out in terms of whether you have an idea and build something on it, or even if you build a technology, can you really take it to a commercial product end? Yeah. But we realize that even if we are unable to, for whatever reason, bring it out in the market as a commercial product or a technology, uh, if we have if we have figured the technology part, at least, that this is how it is, this is how it works, and if we protect it, we realize that tomorrow, I mean, best is like if we decide to commercialize it, yeah, we already have the patent, and if others, the competitors who are looking at in this direction, they will definitely come across, and then we may choose, even to pursue it, or even license it some way. So that's been the thought process all this while, and hence we go after it, and that is what has helped us in investor conversations as well, that they see that we have I don't have a better word, but we have a wider view of of the industry and the influence of the impact of technology on it. For example, AI, machine learning, or blockchain. We were one of the early companies to aggressively file patents around blockchain, right? And that has helped us a lot. Like we know of the conversations wherein there are even players who were looking in a certain direction, and they had to abandon it because they could not get around, and in the end, with one of them, the deal was more that we have to collaborate, because they said that yes, this patent, the way we have patented it, we have ring fenced it, yes, is definite way that we have developed, and we are definitely cracked on part. So all of this has definitely helped, and even on the valuation side, coming to that part, on the investments, definitely valuations matter, and on the valuation side as well, our patent portfolio has helped. We got the patent portfolio itself valued, by third party credit, and there again, that valuation itself is substantial today, and that also gives that confidence to the investors that one is the business, second is the on the revenue side or the potential, but then the underlying IP itself has a good value. So that lowers the risk, at least in their eyes, I'll say.
Great. Well, thanks, Gaurav. And Gani, your perspective on investor side, how to build a strong story of IP story, so to say. What do you look in the IP story of companies? I think that's a better way to put it.
So I mean, I'll start. I mean, I probably give this example multiple times, but I'll give an example of a company which I led investment from our fund in Japan. So this company produces the next generation emitter molecules for your smartphone screen. Are you able to hear me? Okay. So the smartphone screens are becoming OLED, organic LED, and they need a certain colors, RGB colors, to be emitted. And this company was focusing on creating the RGB emitters molecules for the smartphone screen. Okay. So and this is the problem statement. And the display is a very large market. Count the number of televisions and smartphones and your Apple watches. It's a huge amount of square foot of area of display. And this company had been working in academia in a university called Kyushu in Japan for 10 plus years to create the fourth generation technology. So when we invested in this company, they had fundamental patent on how to create a RGB emitter molecule, which doesn't use rare earth elements, which is much lower in power, which is much more cost competitive. So all the three parameters it met from a business sense for us, and and this was, as I mentioned to you, a 10 plus years of work that resulted in this business, this idea to start this company. So this gave us a lot of confidence. And as Gaurav rightly put us, so when we invested itself, this company had 100 plus patents, and we did some valuation, and we said that what happens to this company? You know, these are all high risk companies. These companies can become $1 billion company the moment their revenue is 1 or 2 million. It doesn't need to be hundreds of millions to become $1 billion company. The moment the technology is mature, ready to go, this will be $1 billion company, because the large display companies will buy their chemicals at volume. So what we decided is, what is the real worst case? The real worst case, if the company folds up, the intellectual property value itself is double the time of the valuation we gave to invest in this company. So that gave us a lot of comfort. And we looked at the competition of this company. So while this company had 100 plus patents at that time, now today they have 500 plus patents. The competition to that is a Princeton-based company in US, which had 3,000 plus patents. Okay, so this clearly tells us, you know, you can build a fund. These are real deep tech. You can't create this. And say another thing is, let me also tell you, the total players playing in this area is only 3 or 4. It's so intellectually tough that there's only 3 to 4 players in the whole world. One in Germany, one in Japan, one in America, and maybe one upcoming in China. Right? So we know that the moat that you have created to create this type of companies is a very hard work of 10 plus years of advanced research, which has resulted in 100 plus patents. And those 100 plus patents are multiplying every day. And to create a company which hopefully, by the time you're $1 million revenue, you get bought over for $1 billion acquisition, right? So anyway, so just to give an example, this is the type of companies, in my opinion, the strong deep tech companies. I'm not saying that every company has to be like this. Actually, to be honest, it will be very difficult. That's why I want to distinguish intellectual property and patenting. Patenting is something which is very unique in nature, where we make the claims in such a way that we are one of the first in the world. At least we think we are one of the first in the world, and we defend in the patent office that we are the first in the world to create it. Intellectual property is a bunch of very complex work which is being done. Whether it is patentable, not patentable, it's very difficult to say. It may have some patents also, but it's a bunch of very, very complex a piece of technology work, which is not very easy to do. Right? So many companies may have strong intellectual property and may lack patents. But if there is a company that comes your way, that it has 10 years of work, hundreds of patents, some of them are fundamental patents, very large market. I mean, these are the good companies to invest. Because you go with this, if this company, and it's a hard problem, that it's a hard problem to solve. If they end up solving it, you reap benefits. If you don't end up solving it, you have not lost it either, because the patent portfolio itself is so strong that somebody would acquire them just for patents, and you probably will recover more than your money.
Sure. No, thanks, Gani and Gaurav. And I think it also kind of comes back to the basic conversation which I have heard in this deep tech space, is that deep tech is always about pushing the boundary of science and then pushing that boundary and taking it back to the market, providing which is 10x better solution than anything that is already existing. So the inherent moat is the entire technology with IP that we are discussing, which has patents, which has fundamental patents, and then that creates the entire value of that deep tech company. And like Gani also kind of summarized, that not everybody will be there, and it's not necessarily need to be. But I think the whole conversation is also about that. Yes, we have pushed the boundary of technology to some extent, and that's why we have got some IP, and that's why we are able to give a 10x better results or better service or better product than what is out there in the market. So I think that kind of summarizes the whole kind of conversation about how to build the IP story. And I think people who are listening this, this is absolutely a great insight that how to really pitch your IP story. So thank you, speakers of
Just
that.
want to add one statement, Govind. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's very easy to say the valuation of the company increases. I mean, if not exponentially, at least non-linearly with the number of patents you have. Right?
yeah,
Services company, may not have the patents because the customers sometimes end up owning all of the patents. I'm not saying they don't have any patents, but most of the critical patents, the customer would end up owning it.
sure.
So you don't get a huge valuation.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, the product companies which owns patents significantly get valued. Example,
Mhm.
Apple. Apple would be what? I mean, a certain X billion dollars of revenue, valuation would be 5 times, 10 times the revenue. Look at Foxconn, which is
Mhm.
manufacturing Apple phones. Very similar revenue, but maybe
Yeah.
half the revenue as valuation. So the valuation difference between an Apple and Foxconn would be 10 times. And that
Mhm.
clearly shows how much the world values the innovation. Higher the
Mhm.
innovation quotient, which is
Mhm.
quantified with patents, gets you always much higher valuation.
Sure.
So the value is basically on the intellectual property and the patents.
Oh, great insight. Thank you, Gani. Now, IP as a, of course, let's say, patent for that matter, is typically considered, during early stage as a cost and investment, and so it happens in later stages. And like you mentioned about due diligence on your patent portfolio, when you do it in a systematic manner, things would quickly come to a naught. So, Gani, what's your advice to startups on this? How to approach this, balance of cost and investments? And of course, selfish question would be to be of that part would be that advice of working with competent IP professionals and IP agencies for that matter. So some insights on that would be really useful.
So Govind, sorry, I missed you. I couldn't understand. So it's saying the cost of patenting and how do you balance it out in a
Yeah,
seed
how to
stage?
balance and how to balance this in the future, and also how to kind of go about finding the right people to work with on your IP portfolios, right? Because it's always like
Yeah.
there's always very cheaper to do your stuff, right? So how to really balance it? What would you
Yeah.
advise to startups who are building deep tech companies?
See, many startup. I mean, if you're coming from a multinational like Intel or a Broadcom or a Microsoft, and you have a 10, 15 years of experience, you essentially start with that cushion that you understand how important is patent, and then you start working with some patent lawyer right at the start when you're forming a startup. Right? I mean, you need to have somebody. We see patent lawyers are also a very dynamic range, right? I mean, some lawyers have really good credibility in drafting good technical patents. So you have to have a good startup CEO with a good experience in one of these corporates would start thinking about working with a good patent lawyer on how to create the IP story of his firm. But if you're coming from without much experience, which is, in my opinion, a lot of startups in India will be like that initially, because even though we are a very a vibrant startup ecosystem, we're still at the early part of our journey, right? Compared to what US is, even compared to what Israel is. So I think at this point of the time, I think the startup CEOs somehow have to be helped. I don't know who is going to help them, the advisors or the seed investors who have to sit with the startup CEO, because many startup founders I have met really ask me the same question, that why should I patent? If I patent, I'm releasing every all piece of my information in public domain, and I'm not going to patent. Right? That is one fear they have. The second fear they have is what you are saying, the cost of patents. I mean, cost of Indian patent, then cost of PCT application, then cost of patenting in every country. I mean, to be very honest, it's a very expensive process, right? And that is where I'm hoping that I don't know whether it's still there or they're not, but the government used to give a lot of subsidy before. When I was running Cosmic, I remember the Karnataka government used to reimburse quite some patents, maybe 60-70% of our patent cost. They used to uh, uh, help us to get reimbursed. But so I think, and if, see, this is on the seed stage. So seed stage, you may not even probably aim to do hundreds of patents in PCT and different countries, etc. But at least I would do a provisional patenting. I want to buy time. I will do all this work so that I have, and I may probably, greedily do one patent with many clients. I want to create some of these solid patents with multiple clients initially, and then uh, as I keep increasing on my budget, as I keep increasing on my funding in Series C, Series A, I will also go and tell my investors that I need to have a portion of the fund that is coming in for patenting. That the Japanese company, which I told you, has 500 patents, and that is applied in multiple countries. So for sure it's a very expensive process. So a portion of our funding is when we say that we are doing the Series D round of 50 million, we know that 5 million of that we will allocate for patenting. But I know that that is very crucial for us to be in this business, right? So in the seed stage, I probably will buy time with provisional patenting, Indian patenting, buy time, and probably multiple clients in one. But I will definitely not miss out in getting a good patent lawyer as an advisor to me in ensuring that I protect the key elements of my IP. But as the round goes, I will seriously raise a portion of the money that I raise for patenting, and most investors would not have problem with that, I think.
Sure. No, thanks, Ani. Gaurav, your take and your experience on how to kind of overcome this mindset of cost versus investment, and what has been your experience working in this area. Some insights that would be great.
We filed our first set of provisional patents when we were still bootstrapped. So at that time, one can imagine, yeah, it was a really tough decision that yes, all of this money that is going to go, and we were straight away going for the US patents. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us that money meant a lot, right? But what we were very clear is we could see the opportunity in two ways, as I highlighted earlier. It's like, see, we see that we have probably understood a problem, better than others. We have a solution. We have a piece of technology, or rather, the way we have solved it, we see definitely nobody else has thought of it. And for us, the bet was very clear that okay, what's the worst case? Worst case is anyways we go down, and in that case at least we'll have something, that okay, we did something, right? And that's how we did it, right? That we otherwise we could see that we'll always have this regret looking back. Oh, that is what happened, like 5 years later when you see something coming up, you say, oh, I had thought of it, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't we do it? So he said, okay, forget it, we should do it. So even being bootstrapped, we went ahead. And that is how I relate with it, what Gani said, that even at a seed stage, go ahead, make a calculated bet, of course, but go ahead and file the provisional patents and buy some time. Yeah, go ahead. That is definitely needed. And in that, again, getting the right team, that right attorney, right team is absolutely crucial, because otherwise all of that money is literally down the drain, because anyways you are going to probably monetize, commercialize is much later. But if you don't even uh, have a higher probability of patenting something good, and getting that IP in place, then definitely that money is a waste. And last, I'll say yeah, it's more important to think from perspective what to patent rather than how many. Yeah. Choosing it well is the most difficult part of it. When you are working in a domain, when you are solving a problem, you will definitely look at 10 things, but you need to have that perspective that where the bigger opportunity is, what is it that you really feel is going to grow. And that is where, because you can hedge that, is that even if you are not able to solve the entire problem tomorrow, yeah, and bring it out in the market ultimately, you will have the key pieces of the puzzle, a lot of them with you, right? So choosing the area in which you start building the IP, that's very crucial.
Sure. Oh, great, great,
So
Sangam.
just one more point, Govind. So to understand this is, I think Gaurav made the comment initially, right? A house and a fence, right? So fence is, let's say, patent, and house is what you are building. So the analogy should be like, do you want to keep this without fence, which means somebody can break it or break open and cause you a significant damage. But fence does cost you money.
Yeah.
So that is a rational. See, it is pragmatic to think how many patents we can do, whether can we do patents at all at stage. All are correct statement because that's a real life problem based on the cash you have in the bank. But the thought process of doing analyzing this is very important. That's all I'm trying to say to the startup founders. We understand
Mm.
there is a cash flow constraint, but make sure that you still understand. You talk to a good attorney, figure out what are the how you have to protect your IP, which are the key things which you need to do, what is the understanding of it, and later on you have the flexibility what to do when. And I also
Mm.
strongly believe even today there should be schemes in the government to reimburse some portion of this money, right? Either
Mm.
the institution or the government, etc. There should be some way to recover some portion of the money, or as I said, provisional patenting.
Mm.
Really do it in a very cheap way,
Yeah.
and buy time. So that, but it's important to have that thought process. Lacking that thought process and saying that if I do patent everybody will copy, I feel is a very shallow way of defining that
Mm.
problem. Rather saying that I will understand this deeply, but I understand my constraints, and based on my constraints this is my plan, is a better
Mm.
way of looking at it.
Sure. No, thanks. I think a lot of lessons here that we can draw upon. And since we are short of time, I have dropped some questions, but now I'm almost to my last question, which is very important and asked many times. We know patent portfolios are important, but how to create and foster a healthy IP culture at a startup? And I'll first talk to Gaurav, because Gaurav, we have had, of course, I've seen this journey from day one. So, but I still want to kind of ask you this secret, that how the team of churned out so many good ideas of so many patents. What were the secret of kind of building this IP culture in at the organization that you have been part of? So that would be a great insight for a lot of startups who are thinking about building an IP portfolio.
So here I'll add, Govind. I have to. You have not just seen the journey; you have holded our hand through it and guided us to the right path. So, uh, and in that again, I'll admit, we to build even this culture, we got help from the Arctic team, definitely, yeah. But how we did it, I'll say. Um, Instilling that or before that, first, even creating that awareness in the team at how important a patent is, or how important is it to get classified as an inventor, that like getting that tag of an inventor and what it means, yeah, how it will, because in our team, as it has been a very young team, right? And uh, the team members who were just starting their journey, or this was either their first job, second job, not beyond that, for them to understand this in an Indian context. In Indian context, again, because everywhere you go, rarely people talk about this. Most of it, your career path also, is tied to different things, right? So for us, it was very crucial to let people understand that why it is important and how it is going to help them in their career. It was very simple. It's like, forget about how it is going to help the organization and so on. We understand, not all of you are going to be with us for next 20 years, right? But even if you move, yeah, how it is going to help in your own career, yeah, how it is going to help you, in your work even later on. That is what I believe we did a good job. and second, bringing that thought process and discipline, right? That you start developing an understanding of uh, what constitutes a patent when you're thinking about it, an idea, and when you start thinking in terms of the claims, what goes on, how should you think about it, what can be put in, what cannot be, what can be defended, what cannot be, even from a perspective that there always been a mental block, even I had the same, that oh, we are putting in something which you don't have today, right? How can we do it? And that is where that you don't need to restrict your thought process from that. You don't need to have it ready today, and by that time if you're doing it, then you are already late. You have to think from a perspective that yes, this is how we are going to do it, and yes, of course, you have validated that solution, at a level in your head, and then you go ahead. So getting all of this, and finally generating ideas itself, that was the hardest part, because we realized that in the first few such workshops or the meetings, people were very hesitant even to share anything, because for them to, this is so obvious, why we should, I don't think this is patentable, it is, we should not put it. Why? Because we realize that when somebody, in a team is working on a problem, yeah, and or even has started working on a solution and has come across, that seems so obvious to you, that you think maybe this is obvious to the world, and this is something which is which everybody would know, or it's out there. And that is where we again had to push them. Okay, don't trust us, yeah, don't trust the the Arctic team, so on. Go ahead, this is Google Patents or the USPTO site, go ahead and search for it. Yeah. So we actually made them search and find out that what they are thinking, if it's out there. And that is where they started getting that confidence that yes, they are coming up with things, they are coming up with ideas which are really unique, which is not there. And that's where we started getting a good flow of these ideas. And that's how again we think that we were able to uh, align it very well with the with how the product is growing, how the different pieces of the technologies were moving. Like for example, when something new came up, like AI, all the buzz around AI came up, that we were already ahead in terms of the work that we had already done with computer vision, natural language processing, and then when blockchain came in. So at that, by that time, the team was already primed up. So I think that early on investment helped us get ready, that now our turnaround time, yeah, is quite low in terms of if team thinks of, if you have come up with something, the journey to get that claims out, and get the first draft, the idea out, and the first draft, that's very fast at our end.
Thanks, Gaurav, and of course, thank you for your appreciation. And of course, it's all possible because of the great team at the other end, right? We are just facilitators in the process. But Gary, I think a very important question, because you see companies from a different cultural angle and different boards to sit on. So with your experience, how startups should foster IP culture, and what should they do in terms of, and some share your stories around, these things would be really, really useful for us.
Yeah, startups and some of the MNCs which follow the certain IP culture. Let me just summarize in the following way, right? First is, each company should have certain values, and in almost all the good companies I've seen, innovation is a core value. The deep tech companies, which means that in every department meeting, every group meeting, or all hands meeting, the CEO should be re-emphasizing why innovation plays such an important role for our business. That's number one. Second is, you need to form a small committee of senior technology guys in a startup, the moment you start, I would probably do this within the first 6 months. Have the 3 senior technologists as a patent committee who starts receiving the applications from his own team or the entire company, because everything that the designer says or the software guy says can be patentable. So you need a couple of senior guys who have each got a good experience in patenting, who themselves have a few patents in their bucket. They are forming a small committee by themselves in a startup, and they encourage all the engineers, please start generating your ideas and submit through us, and we will shortlist. And this committee will meet probably once a month and say that out of the 10 applications we have received from our own team, maybe 2 are worth patenting, right? Because patenting involves cost, and this committee kind of shortlist. But first is you encourage all the people on innovation. Secondly, you start receiving applications, and this 3 committee meets regularly on a month-on basis and shortlisting on how to, what are the things which are now ready for patenting. Third is once they got the patent filed, not necessarily granted. Once it is filed, we celebrate it publicly in all department meetings, because it's the patent. A guy getting patent should be celebrated, because any deep tech company with innovation as the core value, you need to celebrate that. So the guy who gets the granted with the patent, we usually have a monetary benefit associated with it. It could be a pretty large motivation on applying and getting for patent, right? So we say in the all hands meeting that this guy has got the patent filed, and give him a certain monetary benefit, or it could be whatever he can use, a laptop or buy a books, whatever that goes with it. And then once the patent gets granted, of course, you create the best memento, right? I mean, you create I don't know whether when I was in TA, it was an honor to receive those wooden blocks with, the laser scripted words. Even today, I have in my house. So, I mean, those are all great things you want to keep it as a memento that, this is the patent which was granted to you for this particular date, etc. So, and then you complete with that, you complete with the patent filing on this one. But I'll tell you also some things that TA used to do. In TA in 1980s, you will file patents. Once you file patents, it largely belongs to the company, right? It belongs to the TA. But TA had this unique, I don't know, maybe many companies may have today also, that they used to reward us. So if your patent is used to generate a certain amount of revenue, you will get a small commission. And for some guys, I would remember that it was more than their annual pay. Okay, the royalty they got. So the TA used to give you, whatever I said, a certain token benefit, a good memento, plus some of the best patents, not all patents, some of the best patents which really helped TA to generate a lot of revenue. You got a small portion of commissions, and that commission was many times a pretty large portion of your annual salary. And that's I'm telling in the US. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of ways to close this loop, and that's how the companies kind of increase their patent portfolio. See, the problem now is China is leading in patents, right? And India is still a pretty. I mean, I would not even say 1/20th probably, or maybe even lower than that. And number of PCT applications of ours is even 1/10 of the Indian patents. So we are really, really down. And I think China is now probably 2 to 3 times of US, I think. Yeah. So China is going aggressively, and we are still not catching up. I just hope the awareness increases more and more on the importance of patenting, importance of PCT application. How do we protect in certain countries, which is of target matter? See, it doesn't affect us, we don't know, but it's going to affect us in 5 to 6 years. Nobody, this is how it works. Nobody notices you till you become $100 million revenue. The moment you become $100 million revenue, all your enemies are going to come and say how to stop you creating the $100 million revenue, right? At that time, if you don't have a good patent portfolio, you will regret. So it's very important you start understanding. That's why I continue to insist that the CTOs of startup team should play this role, should work with patent attorney. Of course, we understand the cost constraints, but figure out the strategy. How do we slowly build towards a portfolio which is rich in IP and also helps you in defense and offense at the time it is required.
Well, thanks. And I think a lot of things that I keep on talking about to summarize this question I always said 3 R's are very important in this culture. One is responsibility, that you kind of create this, like you said, putting this as a responsibility of team and team members and put it there in KRAs. I know a couple of companies have like a appraisal point of having that responsibility of filing at least one patent or two patent, right? So first R is responsibility. Second is reward, like you said, Gani. Uh, Based on your business, based on what you can do, put a reward in place. And what Gaurav said, recognition, given them that recognition that, hey, you are an inventor, and make them a feeling of emotion of being an inventor, can really really help us to foster this IP culture. So I always talk about this 3 R's, and I am happy that it is validated by the experts today. But so I think people who are listening this can follow 3 R's, and the it kind of summarizes what Gani and Gaurav is saying. But thank you for sharing that. Now, I think now we are almost there, so let's take up questions and then close the session. So, first question by Rohit, my dear friend: how easy is to defend patent in let's say US market and costs? Uh, Gani or Gaurav, you want to pick up? Otherwise, I can also answer this question. But any inputs from your first?
I really don't want to be in a position to defend any patent in a court because it is pretty expensive. But in terms of cost, etc., Govind, you will be the best guy. See, the idea here is, uh, you know, if I have a good portfolio of patents, and why does everybody likes to cross license with IBM? That's a good question to ask, right? If you look at the world, IBM has so many rich patents. Samsung wants to cross license with them. TA would do cross licensing with them. ADA would do cross licensing with them. Essentially, you are saying that I have so many patents. If you do anything to me, I can come back to you and say that you're misusing several of you're kind of not using several of my patents, right? And I can come after you. So that is why this entire cross licensing also, in my opinion, started. That there's a very high chance I might be using some of the IBM's patents. So Samsung will never go after IBM with this cross licensing and allowing them to use their rich patent portfolio also. So idea here is I would create enough to create that fear to somebody to put case against me. That's all I want to focus on. If the case comes, I'll just go pray. And and probably Govind, you are probably well suited to answer the cost involved in it. But I just want to create enough to create the fear.
Sure. I think the simple answer, I would say that, look, when you have something which is great and you need to defend, there are, in US at least, I can tell you, there are litigation funds who are funding these activities. And I believe that you defend something which has value, right? And I always believe that there will be people who will put money behind if there is a return out of it. US is a classic example where there are many funds available to litigation funds who go after and do this only. And in terms of defending the portfolio, it's like we are questioning this, that, hey, should I put a fence around my house because it's not defensible? Somebody with a bulldozer can really break it. So I always say this, that, hey, you will have money if you have a successful product and service. You will always have money to defend yourself. I think, like IBM example that Gani has given, right? So thank you. Gaurav, you want to take this, or we can move to the last question that we have?
Yeah, no, that's what you have already covered it. It's more uh, important at what stage you are. If there is value, it's not a question about easy or being difficult. You don't have to do anything anyways. There are better people who will take care of it.
Exactly. Thanks. And the last question by Saurabh, again, from fellow IT professional. Hi, Gani. Thanks for those fantastic insights. When scouting for upcoming startups, do you actively use IP as a parameter? And do you use third-party providers for that, kind of discovery, or these things as well? Just
Absolutely, we will use. So many of the companies in the deep tech space, especially the ones which comes from academia, is always, again, I mean, the first is they require a lot of money. So if they require a lot of money, you want to share how rich is their intellectual property or patents. So we do a lot of work. We first we ask them to give the list of their patents, and then we, at least in my mind, at least 4 to 5 companies which I worked on, we had a third party service provider who takes the patent of this company and then gives us a report globally on how valuable that patent is. I'll give you an example. Actually, it'll be a very interesting example for you guys to hear. So, a large $200 billion revenue company chairman, okay, and went to a company which was located close to Stanford, and this company was doing artificial intelligent microwave. Okay, and the chairman was fully. I can't disclose the names, but I'll tell you what happened. So so what this microwave does is it's a AI microwave. So you don't need to say that you put a coffee or you put a piece of meat or something like that. It will automatically recognize, and it'll if it is coffee, it'll heat it up correct temperature. You don't need to do anything. It'll heat it correctly. Okay, if it is a meat, it will cook it all the regions completely. It will do the microwave radiations are directed to uncooked regions, and it will perfectly cook it every piece of the meat. So this guy was super impressed. Okay, it's absolutely impressive actually. So this was a very unique way of supplying microwave radiations from multi directions towards any position you want, and using a normal camera detecting what the food type and adjusting the power level and the time correctly to cook. So he came back and said that we should invest in this, and then I was positioned to do the due diligence of it, right? Then I spent some time, and then immediately I thought I should get into an IP provider, a third party IP provider, to give me a opinion on where the patents lies. And then we found out that this patents has been lying with Panasonic and companies like that, which has been doing microwave oven from 1970s. So this company, whatever they were claiming is their original idea, has been patented by some of these pioneering companies for a very long time. Okay, so we found that they really don't have any IP. If they really get into mass production, that somebody could come and sue them. With the kind of work that has happened by the giants. So this exercise really helped us to not to invest in that company, and that, by the way, I mean, as far as I know, that company didn't get funded, and it ended up getting folded. So this is one example I wanted to say, that it's very important for us. If we are creating a company on a fundamental IP, we need to validate it, and we will spend time by using third-party provider to see how good the IP is.
Thanks, Danny. I think great insights again. Such stories really helps us, because those stories are never out in public. Nobody talks about it, and I'm so glad that I could bring those stories out today. But thank you for both of you. 1 hour 10 minutes went by. We could not even realize that it was so long session. But thank you for coming here today and sharing your knowledge and stories and experiences with our audience. And I would like to thank you today. Any closing comments, and then I again wish you the good weekend ahead. Any closing comments, Gani and Gaurav?
No, thank you, Govind, for organizing this. Again, for all the startup founders, please take time, work with the attorneys or whomever you think are senior guys on the patent portfolio, IP portfolio. Don't lag behind on this. These are all very important tasks which will help you in creating a world-class deep technology companies from India. China is doing very routinely, in fact, doing far more than what it's required. But I think we need to keep up our pace. We can't be in my personal opinion, 1/50th of China or something like that. We should at least go towards 30 to 40% of US to start with. US itself is lagging behind significantly now, and maybe China is overdoing it. But at least let's take US as a reference, South Korea as a reference, Japan as a reference, we should be at that pace. We should just follow that curve in IP portfolio and patenting.
Yeah. Thank you, Gani. Gaurav, any closing comments?
Yeah, thank you, Govind, for having me here. It was great listening to Gani and the anecdote stories and such insights. I'll say that IP play is going to be super important now globally and in India itself now, given the government's push and with what China is trying to do, it's going to be super important, and for any startup. I won't say even just deep tech. For all startups, if we see the longevity and see uh, in terms of any business you are going to run for next 10 years, and you are really looking at that kind of a time scale, IP is going to be really important going forward. And hence the startup founder should seriously think about it, because I think the days of businesses being run in India the way there, that we didn't used to think much about IP, and really didn't care much about it. I think they are going to get over very soon. I'm seeing a major change coming in just next 3 to 5 years. A lot of companies are going to get nasty surprises. So I think it's important that founders understand how critical it is going to be.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Gani. Thank you, Gaurav, again, and wish you
Thank you,
a
Govind.
happy good. And thank you all for being here. So, yeah, uh,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you very much, Govind.
Thank you. So, great. So, next up, we are going to change a bit. We are bringing back Paritosh Pathak, who I don't know if you remember, we did our first episode, which was networking. But this time we are, you know, what we have agreed with him to do a workshop where you will learn some practical way to do things. He will be running the show, and that is on 19th May, 5:30 p.m. Indian time. Don't miss out, because in that one he is going to share real ways how to, you can increase your network. If you're a startup founder, it would be a great insight how to really build your network. Follow me on Arctic and Arctic Invent page to get more of such events. We are keep on running exciting topics and discussions, and then of course do not forget to follow Gani and Gaurav as well. And thank you once again for your support to the startup series. We have been getting great response and messages. Thank you for following. Thank you for listening in. See you all in the next workshop. Thank you.